Well, we're back. Today is not going to be a full day of working on this car, but I did bring a few important things like clutch type E30 differential output flanges. So first job for me is going to be raising this bad boy up, putting those in, and bolting in my axles for the first time in about a month. After that, I do have a lot more parts ready for this car, but nothing that will basically let me start it today. I do have my ECU is finally here. This has a Miller War chip in it, and it already has the correct bracket to mount in an E30. This currently has software for normally aspirated 21-pound injectors. I was running it on my old winter beater, but I do have the turbo tune files, and I've got my really excellent old Windows XP laptop there, which is pretty much what you need. Beyond that, what else? Just a couple of reducers and expanders. I've got V-bands now for the downpipe. Most of that's for the Porsche. I've got oil for it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to put the diff flanges in it and then just sort of take a look at where we are right now. I'm not exactly sure how far in this I'll go because I actually have to work on at e60 today. I'm doing rear brakes, oil filter housing gasket, oil change, oil level sender, and all of the parking brake hardware needs rebuilt. So that will take up most of the day today, unfortunately. But it's looking like I'm picking up a 1985 Mercedes gray market 190e 2.3 16 Cosworth parts car. It's not in good condition, but it has a full drivetrain. So I'm picking that up for parts and probably going to strip it out next weekend. So this car at very least needs to be movable to the degree it currently is. I would prefer if it's running. It probably won't be running ready for turbo at that point. I do have the tap, the 3/8 NPT tap, to get the oil drain plumbed in, but I cannot find my fitting. So, I don't know, I may have to buy another fitting for this thing if that doesn't turn up. I do also have, I think I showed this to you guys last time, but this is the new output for the turbo, or will be. So I'm basically just going to try to get that welded on the turbo and at least facing where this is. So hopefully I don't have to do anything too crazy with the charge piping. We'll see. I know it's going to be quite a bend, and that's not perfect for turbo performance, but I really can't clock this turbo too much, given its internal wastegate situation. So again, we'll just have to see on that. This car is a long way from doing hoons, but even though we're having an unusually nice week here in November in Minnesota, this probably won't be out destroying things on the street until spring, so there will be time to perfect everything, but I do want to get it at least running and fairly solid pretty soon. So I may get some fluids in it today and might put it in a position where I could at least start it normally aspirated, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Well, there you have it. It's amazing how having the correct part for the job makes it super easy. So these are factory small case E30 axles, factory E30 medium case differential flanges, and then this is a factory E30 diff, but it just had Z3 flanges on it because that's what the previous owner was running it in. Suppose I had to snug up the center bearing if I'm setting it back down, even though it's not permanent. I still have to put fluid in the differential, the trans, the engine. Lots and lots of stuff to do yet. Well, the 530's inside. Figure I may as well actually start dealing with this thing. There's a couple more pieces on it that I forgot about. This is a post-96 BMW, so it has a clutch delay valve, which needs getting rid of. It also needs the heated steering wheel replaced and rear brake line, which I forgot about. I'm gonna start off with the oil change though, since I warmed up the engine a little bit. 36 mil on the top. I don't know how many miles this thing's done since its last change, but I think it could do some more. That oil still looks really good. Filter still looks nice and fresh. I'm actually only doing the rear brakes on this car because I'm doing parking brake hardware anyway. And it would just kind of be silly to not do it all at once, but it looks like they need it anyway, which is good. These are the rear lines that need doing. Apparently they're starting to split down at the bottom there. The e60 and the e39 5 Series run pretty much the same rear end, and that's kind of a big issue on the e39 as well, so I'm not surprised to see it here. Oil filter housing gasket's probably going to be the most time-consuming piece of this project, but I've done them 1,000 times before. It's this gasket right here. A little oblonged, but that sits in between this whole assembly here where the alternator hangs and the block. Or I guess, yeah, no, that is the block. So usually that involves kind of taking out the airbox, taking off the belt, alternator, dislodging the power steering pump, and then this gasket itself is really easy. Always do a line of RTV around it just because these gaskets aren't really that great. But I'm just gonna plug away on it. Maybe I'll do little snaps here and there, but it's a pretty boring project, so probably won't go too in depth with it. So there were two Torx T30s that held the airbox in, a single hose clamp, the electrical connector on the MAF. Then when you get down into here, my car had an 8mm Allen tensioner. I told you guys in one of the last videos that there's two different styles. You can see when this focuses, that is a hydraulic style with that little cylinder. I have just taken off the alternator at this point and the belt. So the alternator is two 16mm bolts, and now you can see all 6 of the 13mm bolts that we will be removing. So one right there, one right back in there, one there, there, there. But before we can do that, there is one going upward right down there on the back of the power steering bracket, and then there's 2 on the front of the power steering bracket as well, and this belt is totaled. Oh my, I think I'm gonna have to take the belt off the turbo car and put it on this and bill them out for it. That I don't want to put back on. But anyway, take those 3 13 mils off, and then should be ready to take off the filter housing. Oh baby, was she leaking. Wow. So the oil filter housing gasket's done, but it had been leaking a while, it looks like. Next up, this sensor right here. Very common failure on M52 TU and M54 cars. It just senses the oil level, and they go bad pretty often. So I still have the oil completely drained, which is good because it's going to drain otherwise out like a drain plug. It's just 3 10mm bolts, pulls right out, slap the new one in, 3 10 mils, and you're good to go. Next, just set the springs in the respective holes. They are a little bit different looking, so be careful. Then grab your other shoe and this, and at the same time you're gonna have to get this channel into the other brake shoe and get that mounted down into the hub. And then after that we're gonna pull the springs and get everything in place. So there we are. New spring is in. That is a huge pain. This parking brake has been adjusted once before. This mechanism is not fully decompressed. However, it's not really worth my time to go into the car and disassemble the center console. A combination of these tools, getting the screwdriver behind the edge of the spring and then pushing it forward with the needle nose allows you just enough room to squeeze it in there. So next up now will be the new brake rotor. Actually, seen brake rotors before. Just remember, when you're cleaning the oil coat off of this friction surface, also clean it off of the parking brake shoe surface, because the same thing is true. You will impregnate that friction material with this oil as well if you're not careful. So make sure you rub it down with brake cleaner or soapy water, whichever your preference. Well, there we are on both sides. Parking brake shoes are right up there with my new least favorite thing ever to do. I'm just going to do the line, put the caliper back on, put the new rotor on, figure out if I need to bleed the brakes. If you're really careful and clever with how you undo and redo all this stuff, you can oftentimes get away without any air bubbles. So it's always a good idea to bleed, especially if the car is an unknown age of brake fluid, but just about done here. So the last step of my project is actually going to be doing the steering wheel, and these are always a little bit different, so I figure even though I've already taken the bag out, I may as well show you. In the back on the bottom there is a little hole. Stick a standard screwdriver blade in this direction, and what you're aiming for is actually this metal bar back here, but it also actuates the bars up top. So when I press up on it, pardon, this is very fiddly. Well, basically what it's doing is it's compressing the spring on both sides, and while the spring is compressed, you actually push in lightly on the airbag and then it pops out. And there's just one little electrical connector down here. Next up is going to be disconnecting both little plugs on the clock spring. Goodness. There we go. And then this looks like a 16 mil, I'm guessing, so zip that out.